And we're back. And welcome and thank you for staying on. This is the home stretch. We've saved the best for last. We've got Dave Honeyman here, who's our Business Head of A&H and Motor. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Anton, my co-host, who'll be talking us through some of the claims data. This next segment will be about 30 minutes, and then we'll have our talk with Ian Furr, and then straight after that, we'll be announcing the winner of that Apple Mac desktop computer that many of you entered into with the survey competition. All right, let's get into personal accident claims. So maybe no surprises here, but over the last 3 years, 2019, we were at 37 million, then down to 32 million in 2020, and then back up to 38 million. So a little bit of a dip there in 2020. And claims volumes have actually surpassed where we were prior to the pandemic. So your thoughts on this, Anton?
Simon, I think, one of the concerns that I've got, just looking at the statistics, is that, the percentage in reduction of number of claims down to 2020 isn't really reflected in the reduction in the number and the value of the claims. And I think, it was an exceptionally sad statistic that came out during our investigation. Even though we had all the reductions there was a 145% increase in deaths from murder and assault.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at those scary stats in a minute.
But that's all that stands out is, there's that complete...
The human tragedy behind these numbers. I mean,
Correct.
This is a line of business, Dave, where I think it really is kind of hits people at home often.
Yeah, very much so.
So, I mean, things are picking up now in 2021 in terms of volumes, economic activity returning to normal. Dave, I mean, are you seeing this in terms of the uptake of personal accident policies as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think the number of claims on the increase and still being higher than the 2019 number, I think, is relevant to the new business that we've had. And also the schools being back fully functional at sporting activities, which would have seen the number of schools or the number of claims coming down within 2020, 2021.
We do a lot of schools personal accidents, so this is cover for the students.
Yeah, this is cover for the students and the teachers. But yeah, so we obviously get big volumes of claims in the student environment, playing sports, traveling to and from events, those kind of things. So those would have been very reduced in 2020 purely because of no sports being played at school. So yeah, so the numbers I think are pretty relative. I don't think they've really changed too much from 19 to 21. I would imagine that road accidents are definitely on the increase. Which
let's have a look at this on that note.
Yeah.
So there, just to talk to your last point, and you raised it as well, Anton. 2019. So those numbers are in millions, and you can see your dark blue bar is your motor vehicle accidents. This is all death-related claims.
Yeah.
In the middle, the murder and assaults that you were talking about, and then an other category. So motor vehicle accidents kind of reaching what looks like a new high, death-related claims in 2021. Did this surprise you, Dave, when you...
Not really. I think it's, we've seen it across our book, and we're even seeing it on our motor book, where there's been a number of vehicle-related deaths, whether it's down to road conditions, whether it's down to the maintenance on vehicles. The load shedding, I guess, doesn't help through this at night time. And I think just people's awareness. I don't think people are concentrating at the same kind of levels that what they would have been prior to a COVID environment.
Do you think people are not used to being in traffic anymore, or driving?
I think they're probably anxious,
Yeah.
I think we're all trying to get somewhere very quickly.
Yeah.
We've all had to change our way of living. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who are traveling to school and back 5 times a day, to go and watch kids' sports, drop this off, drop that off. And we're in a rush all the time. And I've certainly found it now that we're back in the office a couple of days a week that, everyone's in a rush, and people seem anxious. And
I'm really struggling to manage a hybrid diary as well. I don't know about you guys,
it's
but
tough.
you know, like driving somewhere and then having two virtual meetings. I think you're right. There's a lot of pressure on people to be
Big time.
places.
Yeah.
What about this? The scary stat, the number that we read about when the SAPS produce their crime stats. This is from our own portfolio, just to remind the viewers. That 2020 number is horrific. 10.5 million rand in death claims as a result of murder and assault. Why? What was going on in 2020? I mean, obviously lockdown, but
Yeah, look, excuse me. With people being caught up at home, I think there was always a sort of personal interaction. People couldn't go out. People didn't sort of break from each other. Then, excuse me, I really
I think
apologize.
Anton's going to need water here.
Sorry.
You could see a claim happening right in front of your eyes,
right,
folks.
right there. That's the epitome of the operation. But also, I think what we did see was that, you know, in the past, someone would break into someone's house and you won't even know about it.
Yes.
Now everyone was at home. The guys wanted to still do
The criminals
burglaries
knew
and
that
whatever.
there were people at home as well.
Correct. So that also had a major impact on it.
Yeah, I guess less car hijackings, but you know, maybe going to where the victims live.
I think, you know, it's the impact of people being desperate. You know,
The
people weren't
economic
doing-
impact, the
The economic
socioeconomic.
impact is definitely part of it, you know. So whether people were just having house break-ins or just being robbed on the side of the street, I think it plays a massive part in that. And also the home domestic violence, which we saw a massive spike in 2020.
Oh, that's terrible.
Which we saw actually in our review in 2020, where companies said that they had employees who were subject to domestic crime. So I think those factors come into it a lot. So yeah, it's obviously the motor accident deaths would come down. There was less people on the road, but certainly it doesn't surprise me to see that stat. I think it was always going to be that way with people being at home.
It does also, for me, though, underline the value of 24-hour cover. Because you're not just talking about workplace injuries here, which I think which is where a lot of the group personal accident discussions are taking place. But this, I mean, what we're looking at here is generally outside of office hours, probably.
Correct.
I would say in our total claims experience, I reckon that about 90% of our claims that come in happen on a 24-hour basis rather than whilst on the business of the insured. Definitely.
I think we've got some stats here. Let's just take a look at the schools. So these are thankfully not death claims, but these are obviously claims arising from injuries to teachers and students.
Yeah.
Mostly students.
Mostly students, yeah.
Big jump. So 2019, there was no lockdown. So it was like normal activity. Why is it so much higher in 2021 than the other 2 years? I mean, what can we ascribe that to?
I think so we did write a big book of business at the
volume
end of
business.
2019, which would have started in 2020. And a substantial number, probably with the books combined that we took on in 2020, we probably took on about another 150,000 pupils at least.
Wow.
So we didn't realize the claims in year one in 2020 for those, because there was very little sports. But yeah, as you can see, it started picking up, and I can kind of predict that when we get to 2022, that number might double again.
Yes.
So it's certainly.
What kind of cover are we talking about here, though? I mean, are you
Sports injuries.
medical costs
Yes.
over and above medical aid. I mean,
So in terms of demarcation, we as an insurer on a short-term license can only provide for an emergency expense. Okay, so generally something that would happen which wouldn't be covered by a medical aid, which wouldn't be covered by road accident fund or COID. So generally, you know, admission to hospital, make sure the person gets treated and gets the medical attention that they require within a sort of shortish period of time after the injury.
okay.
And also, you know, we've had a couple of disability claims as well. So that would be the high rand amount claims. In fact, I think there was two schoolboys,
school rugby
two schools
time?
rugby claims, yeah. So, and those are bound to happen. I was actually thinking that we might have had a bit more in 2021 because of 2 years of not participating.
Kids are literally out of practice.
Well, yeah, and maybe not conditioned, you know. So I thought there might be a bigger uptake on that, but certainly the medical expense claims are certainly coming in.
And we've also seen an increase in school remission claims as well for 1 or 2 pupils that actually couldn't make it back to school.
Okay.
Through injuries, yeah.
Yeah. So,
frightening but valuable in terms of coverage. Look, no A&H presentation is complete without reflecting on COVID and what employers actually did during the pandemic. So we asked, in fact, not just in the business leader survey, but even in the liability and the PI surveys, we asked these questions about COVID. And on average, 24% of employers said that they reduced the number of staff in the workforce. 35% said that they reduced or cancelled bonuses and other incentives. And 25% actually said that they'd increased the working hours of their staff. So we could put this in a bucket of, let's call it, these are survival measures that were initiated by employers during the pandemic, during the lockdowns. Do you think that this has an impact on claims, Dave? These things?
Big time. So, reduced staff numbers. We're dealing with people here, like we said at the beginning. It's certainly, staff morale, depression, anxiety, these things coming out of these working conditions. Nobody wants to see their fellow employees or colleagues losing their jobs. The financial impact, has a rippled effect down to your family members, down to, your community, down to everything. So certainly, that will have a massive effect.
Your head can't be in the game if you're
There's no way. Plus then you're being asked to work extra hours. So it's the double whammy of, well, we're going to pay you half, and by the way, you're going to have to work double the hours so that we can carry on working. Yeah. It's just a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. If you chat to people in any business outside of pandemic times, when someone leaves the company or leaves a team of people, there's always this kind of the knock-on effect on the remaining team members, because they know they're going to have to pick up the slack now. Yeah. So it's also, yes, saying goodbye to a trusted colleague, but then having the longer working hours and all of the other stuff that comes with it. Maybe also not being trained.
Well, that's it, so increased working hours and doing jobs that potentially you aren't trained to do. So, and we have seen that. If you think like a long distance driver, because for 2 years nobody was using buses or trucks or like certain transport type of industries. Now all of a sudden those employees have got other jobs doing other things because they couldn't be unemployed for 2 years. And now all of a sudden they're back on, and you've got people that aren't potentially trained to drive for 12 hours or manage road
Maybe
conditions.
They don't have a backup driver.
Manage the road conditions, know the route, those kind of things. We've certainly seen that impact coming through on our side.
Yeah, but in the manufacturing sector as well, people using machines or produced that they didn't really understand.
I think that actually brings me to the next slide, because so you mentioned depression and anxiety, Dave. I think it was in our last risk review, we, as I said to the audience earlier, we sometimes pull data in from other sources. And I think it was the American Psychological Association had commented that they'd drawn a direct parallel between the incidence of depression and workplace injuries, because people just weren't focused on what they were doing. In our report, when we were chatting to our business owners and the independents that came in from the research company, 50% reported cases of depression and anxiety, and then 20% said that they'd experienced some kind of injury on duty. They did not link these two things together. We've done that, but 20% saying that they had an IOD or an injury on duty in the past year. The parallel to me is obvious.
I kind of find that 20% quite high, because how many of those clients are actually fully back at the office? Sure. Or how many are in a purely administrative kind of role? So that 20% to me is quite high. Yeah. And maybe reflective of the 50% that we see on the other side. So I think it speaks to what you were saying now. That is quite high.
I think there's a lot of focus in corporate South Africa on employee wellness, and we have access to programs. But when you go down into the smaller businesses, it's a lonely place to be if you're an SME or an entrepreneur and you've only got 10 people in your team. You had to let 5 go. That's a massive impact on overall morale and the stress and all of the other stuff that goes with it. So a sad statistic, but I think it's something that employers need to be aware of, that there is this kind of correlation, and of course having GPA cover obviously gives you some protection when this happens. But definitely more awareness and thought needs to go into that. We have risk management questions that we ask every year. This year we had a big focus on training of employees, all the way from cyber to corporate governance, all sorts of things. I found it quite disturbing. 25% of employers did not provide any health and safety training. Isn't that a legislated issue? I mean, I think there's an obligation on the business to be providing these things. And 28% actually said they don't have any budget allocated to employee safety in the workplace. Again, just a reminder to the audience, these were not all SMEs. There were a lot of corporates and large businesses in here, although it might have been in the SME sector where they responded in the 28%. Dave?
Sure. That is obviously a scary stat for us. Certainly, there's especially the employee safety and also and like I was saying just now, we've also seen it in our motor area as well, where just looking after the maintenance of vehicles that people are going to be driving, it's become a massive factor and something that you wouldn't expect. But yeah, I mean, this will certainly have an effect on us in our line of business. But again, I think it talks to the economic environment. I think, I don't think it's just blatantly companies saying we'll stuff employees, we're not going to give them any training, all of that kind of stuff. I really do believe it comes down to the economic environment. The businesses are trying to survive.
What are you going to cut back on? Maybe things like training.
They've already cut back on employees.
Yeah.
In certain cases, I mean, we all know that that's one of the biggest expenses to a business. I mean, what's the next one? Yeah. And it talks further to something that we've mentioned as well, is a whole lot of companies maybe aren't even registered with COID. They don't even have those kind of covers in place.
You're reading my mind here.
There you go.
COID. Okay, so 26% said they're not registered with the COID fund. We've seen this almost every year. I think the number's a little bit better this year than it was last year. And then those that were involved with COID said that a third of them said they'd had lengthy delays in getting their claims paid. Dave, I mean, is GPA a substitute for COID membership?
You'll be surprised how many times I get asked that. They're kind of like, companies come to us and they say, well, we'd rather take out a group personal accident policy and get rid of COID because COID don't pay claims. Now, I mean, a group personal accident policy is not a replacement for COID. COID is a statutory fund.
Legally obliged to be a member.
Every company, if you employ people, you have to provide workman's compensation COID cover. So it's not a replacement and certainly shouldn't be sold as a replacement. I've also had a couple of brokers kind of tell me that they've told their clients to stop their COID cover because they can rather buy a GPA policy which pays quicker. Now, it's just, it's not the answer.
Sorry, Dave. Insofar as the D&O exposure is concerned, if we just now mix all of this up again, like what happens at SHA, there are material criminal penalties for a company and directors who don't utilize COID. So that ties in with what Dave's saying.
In an SME, would that be the CEO, the owner of the business, possibly?
It could possibly be, the entire management, definitely the owner. But I think, what my main concern is that, people are talking about whether it's a replacement or not. It is actually not even remotely possible. You can't even say, I'm not going to worry about COID because I've got cover and and it's only about the claim. It's not about the claim. COID is completely, and like Dave said, it's a statutory institution. It's not a please will you comply. It is you shall comply, and there's criminal fines and penalties worked into that act. So it's very, very important.
And not just, buying the cover, claiming is the next big thing. So
You have to put in a claim.
Yes, I mean, there's a whole lot of clients who have COID cover, but they'd never submit a claim. And then they say, well, I'm not going to go through COID, I'm just going to submit the claim to GPA. And, well, we're like, no, that's just the wrong way to do it, because, again, we've had a claim where somebody had a finger injury, and the employer gives that person 500 Rand and says, go to the doctor and get stitches or whatever it is. And, 2 years later, the employee comes back and is like, geez, I'm really having problems with this hand, And the client's like, well, what's wrong? Finds out he's actually got diabetes, complications arise, and his hand's amputated. All of this within like a period of 2 years, 3 years after the injury.
No ability to go to COID then.
Well, yeah, because you've got 5 days to register or 7 days to register a COID claim. Now, this is 3 years down the line. Now, that company could be held liable for future expenses, future income loss, all of those kind of things for that employee going forward as well. And it's just wrong. I mean, look after your employees. And I think that's one of the marketing strategies that we've been bringing to this, is to actually bring an awareness of COID. And I think clients kind of just take for granted that it's a compulsory kind of cover and it's just a disaster. It's not. If you follow the right procedures and if you're guided by people that can help you with those procedures, I certainly think it's a winning formula for everybody. You get to look after your employees, look after your company, and protect yourself as a business owner in terms of the D&O exposures.
But you can appreciate the frustration, though, with the fund. If a third of businesses are saying, well, we don't want to submit a claim because whenever we do, it just takes forever to get a payment done. But is that a fault that lies with the fund, or is there some other reason behind all of this?
I think there's a couple of contributing factors. I think medical providers are not cooperating, so I think that does make it more difficult.
They want their cash up front.
Well, they want their cash up front because it's taking a year to get their money back from COID, is what they say. And I've spoken to some people from COID, and they kind of saying, well, if a client follows the right procedure, it will take 7 days, 10 days. So, and they've got examples of that. So we're certainly going to test that, and, bring
you
that.
provide assistance, actually.
So we do, yeah. So we can provide that assistance to clients with a 24-hour helpline if there is an injury on duty. And I think business owners should also take some responsibility and say, what is your risk mitigation strategy when somebody does get injured on your business site? Where are you going to take them? And go visit that hospital. Say, listen, I'm business X, I'm 500 meters from your doorstep. If one of my employees gets seriously injured, what will happen?
Sure.
And maybe open up an account with the hospital or do something, and just understand what is going to happen, because a lot of medical providers will not accept COID patients, which is quite sad. But
that is,
our 24-hour line will actually guide them to the correct hospitals, pick them up in an ambulance, and take them to a hospital that is registered with COID, which I think is
a good service. Let's move on to, we call this opportunity Knox, and I know that most of the people on this call are sales focused, being brokers, but there were a number of things that came out of the survey this year, which we think highlights possible opportunities for brokers.
Sure.
So 37% of the businesses we spoke to said that they provide medical aid benefits to staff. Okay, vast majority do not provide any medical aid benefits. 52% said they've got some kind of retirement benefits in place for staff. And then 47% said they don't provide any income protection benefits to staff. Where are the opportunities here for group personal accident or A&H covers?
So, I mean, if we take 2021, for instance, was our accidents and health division's best new business year in the 20 years that I've been doing this. It's completely unexpected given the financial, economic environment. But I think, once bitten, and clients have now had to deal with it. They've had to go to their employees and say, listen, I can't pay you in 2020. We don't have an income, I can't pay you. And that must be devastating. If you're running a smaller type business,
Yeah, that's like a big demotivator.
Yeah, it's personal.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it's a lot more personal than some of the larger corporates. And they don't want to be caught like that again. So we've actually found, and something that we've taken as an advantage out of some of these stats is brokers are starting to become more open to allowing us to join their meetings because we can in a virtual environment now. So I don't have to get in my car, travel an hour, whatever. We're joining in meetings for 10 minutes and we discuss what we can offer very, very quickly. And we've got about a 92% success rate of the clients that we've done presentations to. And if the product is sold correctly, I firmly believe that those big percentages where the opportunity lies can really be tackled by our brokers out there. And the product speaks to a lot of the needs that they have. And we certainly are able to package it that way. And we've been very surprised, I think, at some of the reactions we've got from clients because they have no idea that these covers are available. And they are looking for something. If an employee gets injured or has a heart attack or something like that, and whether we're able to help from an income perspective. And the COID element, clients do want to cover those gaps and make sure that they are compliant and look after employees. So there's a lot of opportunities coming out of those stats for us, and it shows you that there's a lot of people out there that just absolutely have nothing. And I wonder through some of these environments whether those stats will actually reduce going forward.
So I mean, just to clarify though, A&H is, or a personal accident policy, not a substitute for a medical aid or a pension fund.
No.
But if in tough economic times, it does enable the employer to provide something.
Sure.
That does provide some employee benefit, even though it's maybe not focused specifically on medical expenses or retirement
Absolutely.
funding.
I mean, look, your first prize is a group life and life benefits. They cover all life events. Certainly, personal accident is a watered-down version, not providing the death any cause. But a lot of companies out there just don't have the cash to pay for a medical aid, to pay for a provident fund, to pay for risk benefits. And a lot of employees won't join companies that enforce it because they would rather have the cash and have their own individual member choice to decide what covers they want and where and what plans they want to be on, what schemes they want to be on. So I've heard a lot of companies kind of saying now that they've lost good staff because they have provided it. So it's quite a double whammy, I guess, for businesses.
Yeah, things are tight out there. Dave, thank you. I mean, it's the 25 minutes has kind of flown by. Any closing remarks from you to our audience?
Just, I mean, personal accident, group personal accident has always just been one of those covers on a multi-mark that you just tick and go, client's not interested, client's not interested. I really do challenge all of you to give us a shout and find out where this can add value. There's a lot of value to be had. I think it creates a very big trust element between broker and client and the people that work within that business when we're able to help the people. We're very people-focused, orientated. We've got a great team that can help. And give us an opportunity to explain it to all of you, and got no doubt that we can really make a big impact on new business in this line going forward.
Thanks, Dave. Well said. That was Dave's non-sales pitch, sales pitch. So we'll exclude that 1 minute from the CPD tally. No, thank you, Dave.
You should have waited with that.
Anton, a wrap-up from you on what Dave said, and of course on this as a whole, because we're at the end of the segment.
Yeah, Simon, I think what Dave said is actually quite true, and I think it's something that people need to understand. Within the A&H space, we see individual people, and regularly we see the families on the other side destitute, and when the money flows, it's really, that's where the rubber hits the road. And this is something where you can either have employees with high morale even in a sad situation, or you can totally destroy your company and everyone going forward if there is that type of situation. And certainly from the claims and from the underwriting side, as you just confirmed, Dave, we see these claims as individuals. Every single claim is an individual. It's not a claim. It's not a corporate. It's not just another check. So we go out of our way to get those things settled quickly and professionally.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks again, Dave.
Cool,
And
thank you.
Anton, thanks for your time today. It's been a pleasure having you on board.
Great being here.
And yeah, we'll be introducing our next speaker shortly, which is Ian Furr, who's going to be talking about cultureneering.